Grit fell from the rafters in a thin, steady line, and it landed on his open eye before he knew the eye was his. He blinked. The line of dust kept coming. Then the body reported in, one wrong fact at a time. Bare feet, a dirt floor under them, cold, a taste of copper and wet lime at the back of the throat. His knees were drawn up against a chest that breathed too fast, and the breathing was not a thing he had ordered. Lu Cheng tried to sit, and the body sat for him, smooth, ahead of the thought. Across the shed, the old master lay under a fallen lintel, one arm out, the hand still curled around a mallet the way a man holds a rail going down. No rise in the back. Lu Cheng had stood at enough collapse sites to read a body's load at a glance, and this one carried none. Master Tuo. The voice that said it was high and cracked, and not his. He felt it leave the throat, and the wrongness of that turned his stomach over once, hard. Someone moved in the doorway. He's gone. A girl, maybe 12, soot down one cheek, a clay water jar still hugged to her ribs. She didn't come closer. The east wall came down on him. You were under the bench. He looked at the bench. At the gap where the body had folded itself small. He had no memory of folding it. Get up, Sen, she said. The bell rang. They'll count us. Sen. He held the name like a tool handed to him in the dark, unsure of the grip. He stood. The legs knew how. They braced and pushed and found the balance before his mind had finished surveying where the floor was, and the gap between his deciding and his moving opened under him and would not close. This was the part he kept waiting to end. He pressed both palms to the wall to steady the drop, and the hands answered the stone before he asked. The right palm settled into a worn groove it already knew. The fingers spread along a seam, measuring, the way his own fingers used to run a drawing for a missed dimension. The skill sat in the meat of them. It was not his. Sen, her voice sharpened. Your wrist. He turned the wrist over. A mark sat below the heel of the hand, dark, raised, the size of a coin. He hadn't seen it before, because he had never owned this hand before. It was warm. As he watched, it pulled tight, and the pull ran up the arm to somewhere behind his eyes and stopped there, anchored. He knew an anchor when he felt one. He had set 1,000. The bond's holding, the girl said, and something in her face eased, which told him a bond that didn't hold was the worse outcome. Good. They don't waste a feed on a dead boy. He pressed the mark with his thumb. It didn't give. Skin over something seated deeper than skin, fixed, the way a pin is fixed once the grout has gone off and the day for moving it is past. He turned for the door. A man wakes from a thing like this by walking out of it. 2 steps. The mark drew tight and held him at the threshold. Not pain, a tension, a load line going taut, and his feet stopped without his telling them. He stood in the doorway and looked out. No skyline he knew. A terraced slope climbing into mist, and cut into it, stone after stone, the half-raised ribs of a temple, scaffold lashed with rope, the lime pale and wet where the courses ended. Lanterns moved up there. Men were already counting heads by lamplight while the tremor's dust still hung in the air. The girl set down her jar and took his sleeve. Don't just stand. Mark you slow, they mark you cheap. He let her pull him a pace into the cold. The skill in his hands waited, patient, certain of work it could already feel coming. Behind him, the master cooled under the lintel and would not wake. Lu Cheng counted his own breaths, and they came on without him, 12 to the minute, steady as a pump he had not built and could not switch off. So the body would run whether he stayed in it or not. Then whose years were these hands already spending? The 46th temple bled from a seam no one could find. By the second hour, the foreman had 4 masters up on the east platform, gray men on their knees, palms flat to the courses, listening. Lu Cheng stood below with the water crew and watched them search the wrong stone. 2 years in Sen's body had taught him to keep his mouth shut. The hands had grown. The reach was a man's now. The grip able to hold a flat chisel steady through a full strike. He carried a water gourd instead and said nothing. The leak was easy to hear if you stopped listening for it. A thin pull at the back of the throat, a draw on the air, steady. The masters tapped along the bleeding course and chased the sound. The sound was a liar. Where the chi sang loudest was where it escaped, not where it broke. Here, Master Ho set his chisel to a hairline above the lintel. The fracture runs under this. He cut. The whistle climbed. Lu Chang watched the flow the way he had once watched a storm grid back up across half a district, not at the drain that overflowed, but 3 streets uphill, where a crushed pipe sent the whole load doubling back. The meridian ran the same. The break wasn't on the east face at all. It was the return line, low on the north pier, where 2 courses met a hair-off square and forced the chi to fold on itself until the pressure split a seam 2 spans away. Ho cut again. The platform timbers groaned. The foreman had caught him staring. Water, up. The climb gave him a count to think. Carry the gourd, pour, climb down, stay cheap, stay alive. The seam above the lintel would widen for a week while 4 masters cut at the wrong stone, and the inspector would dock the whole crew, and Sen's ribs would feel it by winter. He set the gourd down on the north pier instead. The fault here. He put 2 fingers on the low course where the joint ran off square. Not up there. The breaks downstream of the bend. You're cutting where it spills, not where it backs up. Master Ho turned slowly. The orphan reads stone now. Pull the load off this corner, and the seam upstairs closes on its own. Lu Chang kept his voice flat, a man reading off a number. 3 cuts. Open the return, let it run straight, reseat the chi. Ho's look could have stripped lime. But the foreman, who answered to the inspector, who answered to the sect, jerked his chin. Show me. Wrong, and you eat the master's docking, boy. The hands took the chisel before he had decided to reach. They knew the angle. He set the edge into the off-square joint, low, and read the grain once with his thumb. First strike. The chisel bit. A wedge of stone fell away, and the draw in the air dropped half a tone. Second strike. 2 fingers over, opening the return line clean so the flow had somewhere to go but forward. The whistle finned to a hiss. Third. He turned the edge and shaved the bend square, and the chi let go of the corner all at once and ran straight up the pier, and the seam above the lintel drew shut with the small sound of a breath released. The platform went quiet. Master Ho stood over a fault he had not found, holding a chisel he no longer needed. Lu Chang wiped grit from the blade and reached for his gourd, cheap again, invisible again, exactly as he wanted to be. A man he had not marked spoke from the upper scaffold. Robed, clean-handed, a sect seal bright at his collar, he had been there through all of it, still as the stone. He did not look at the masters, he looked at the orphan who poured water. "Whose boy is that?" he said. "And where did a bonded mason learn to see the line itself?" The foreman's mouth opened and found nothing. Below, the hands kept pouring, even and unhurried, while behind Lu Chang's eyes, the bond mark pulled taut and held him fast to a place that had just stopped being safe. "You'll seal for the 47th. The overseer said it the way other men said the rain had stopped. He had followed the crew down off the terrace when the lanterns went up, and now he sat in the foreman's tent with a lacquered board across his knees and a sheet pinned flat under a river stone. By the flap, the foreman would not meet Sen's eyes. "He's water crew," the foreman tried. "Bonded to the house, not contracted. He reads the line." The overseer turned the board so the page faced Lu Chang. "Water crew don't, so he isn't water crew." Good rag paper, ruled in red, a column of seal boxes running down the right edge. Most were filled. He counted them before he could stop the habit. The next box sat empty, waiting. "Press your mark here." The overseer wet a brush in the inkstone and held it out, handle first. "The docking I named this morning dies with the ink. Refuse, and the crew eats it, and you with them." Lu Chang kept his hands at his sides. He had felt the other boxes without understanding them. A dull pull below the hand each time the house moved him to new stone. A tax he'd taken for hunger. "What does it cost?" He did not expect an answer. The overseer's mouth moved, almost interest. "Stone cost the quarry. Roofs cost the forest. He nudged the brush nearer. "You'll learn the rest by paying it." The foreman studied the dirt floor. That told him enough. Take the brush, and a year goes. He had turned the figure over since the mark first stopped his feet at the threshold 2 years back, and the sum never changed. The house would feed this body whether he willed it or not, and a man who could not walk out could not hold out forever. The hands decided before the planner did. They always did. His fingers closed on the shaft, found the balance, drew the tip across the stone without a spill. The overseer watched the grip the way a buyer watches a scale settle. He set the point in the empty box. The mark below his hand woke and pulled, not taut this time but inward, a draw that went past skin into the wrist and up the arm to somewhere behind the breastbone, and the ink ran out of the brush into the rag while something ran out of him to meet it. Cold climbed the marrow of both legs. His knees took it badly, unbraced. For the length of one breath, the lantern flame stood very small and very far. Then it passed. The box was sealed. The line was even, because the mason's hands never shook. The overseer lifted the board and blew across the wet stroke. "Clean," he said, the way a man praises a cut. Lu Cheng set the brush down and could not feel the difference. A year was gone, and the body that spent it stood there breathing, warm and unmarked, the same height it had been at noon. No wound to dress, no scar to read. The ledger had closed one line and opened the next. Other men's marks had filled that sheet when he sat down. His made one more. One box waited beneath it still, and the bond already knew which year it would take. Bei was running a wetted thumb along the lip of a half-cut lotus when Lu Cheng ducked under the carver's awning, late, the camp gone to embers behind him. The old man did not turn his head. Half blind, he read the petal by feel, the chisel laid flat across one knee. "You sealed." Not a question. For the 47th. Heard the overseer's boots come down the terrace. Bei set the lotus in the dust. "Sit before you fall." Your legs went out from under you. They always do, the first time. Lu Cheng sat. The shelter smelled of cut limestone and lamp oil burned too long. "I want to know what's at the bottom of the sheet." Bei's hand left the lotus and felt backward, to the base course of the great wall they leaned against, fingers walking over the stone. Shallow marks crowded the foot of it. Hundreds, run together close as hail pits. "Mason's chops," he said. "Every man who carried a contract cut his own into the wall's foot. The house lets him. Cost them nothing, and it keeps their count without ink." He found a worn one and pressed Lu Cheng's thumb into it. "This row runs back past my master's master. 814 years of men." His nail ticked along the course, one notch to the next. "Count them if you've a winter to waste." "I did, back when I had the eyes for it." "And the ones who finished their sheets," Lu Cheng said. "Where did they go after?" The ticking stopped. Not one walked out from under the bond. Bei said it without weight, the way he'd name a grain in the stone. "Not in 800 years. The chop on the wall is the last of the man who cut it. That's all the house keeps of him." Lu Cheng held still. Somewhere up the terrace, a roof beam settled and cracked. He had counted the boxes already, sitting in the tent, before he could stop the habit. The filled ones, his own, the one still waiting under it. And past that, the 48th, the last temple his contract named. He laid the figures down side by side, the way he'd once laid load against span on a drawing he no longer owned. Each box, 1 year. He multiplied what was left. The sheet was not a debt a man chipped down and cleared. It ran one direction only, toward a day already ruled in red, and the house had drawn that line before he ever lifted the brush. "The bond doesn't end when I'm free," he said. "It ends when I'm spent." Now you've got it. Then why cut the chop at all? Because the wall's the only part of you that lasts the night. Bei's thumb moved again and caught on a fresh notch, sharp-edged, the newest in the row. He rubbed it once and went quiet. Lu Cheng looked at it. Clean tool marks, no wear, the grit still pale in the cut. "There's a story," Bei said lower. "One man, long before me. They say he walked out from under his bond and lived. Just the one. No name to him now, nothing but the saying. He let go of the wall. Believe it if it keeps your hands steady. I never met a soul who saw his back." The lamp guttered, and the marks went to shadow. Lu Cheng pressed his own thumb to the bare stone where his chop would go, below all the others, and felt the cold sitting in the bond beneath his hand. patient, already counting down the years it had left to take. The 47th stood roofless against a white sky. Scaffold ribs threw long bars of shadow across the unfinished floor, and frost had crept into the new tool marks overnight, so the carving showed pale where the chisel had bitten the day before. Lu Cheng knelt at the north pier with the sealing brush dry in his hand. The overseer had set him there to wait. Someone was coming to countersign the work, and a man waited where he was told. Boots on the terrace, not the overseer's. Slower, lighter, a stick tapping stone between steps. The robe came around the scaffold first, gray, with a thread of red worked into the cuff. The same official who had asked, at the 46th, where a bonded mason learned to see the line. Up close he was older than his voice. Long jaw, a clouded left eye, a staff of black wood he did not lean on. "Elder Hanju," said the overseer, and bowed too low. Hanju did not look at Lu Cheng. He looked at the pier. He set 2 fingers flat against the base course, the way Bei felt a pedal, and held them there. Lu Cheng watched the hand. He knew that stillness. He had worn it himself 100 times, the weight while the stone gave up where its load ran. "The leak was here," Hanju said. He moved his fingers upward, slow, tracing a line in the air a finger's width off the stone. It rose. It folded at the second course. His hand stopped exactly where the seam had split. Closed from below. 3 strokes. The overseer made an approving sound, understanding none of it. Lu Cheng understood all of it. The man had read the meridian, not guessed, read it. The fold and the rise and the count of the strokes, the path his own eye walked at every wall. He had found the flaw. He had found the line. He kept his face the face of a tired mason. His pulse did the rest, somewhere he could not order. Hanju turned. The clouded eye drifted. The good one came to rest on him and stayed. "You sealed this." "Yes, Elder." "Your own hand, or to Master Ho's mark?" "My own." He came closer. He smelled of cold iron and old paper. He looked at Lu Cheng's hands first. The chisel callus, the flat grip, then at his face, longer than a man looks at a tool. "Show me where you'd cut next, if the chi moved again." A pause. "Don't think. Point. A test." The wrong answer was the one a water crew man would give, the safe one, the loud singing seam 4 masters had wanted to chase. He could give it. He could be slow and stupid and keep his head down where it had kept him alive 2 years. But the good eye was already on the right place, waiting to see if his hand went there too. He lifted his arm and laid 1 finger on the off-square joint, low, where no leak yet sang. Hanju's mouth moved, not a smile, the small shift of a man who has set 2 figures side by side and found them equal. "Same place," he said, very quietly, so the overseer would not hear. "To the stone." He drew a folded board from his sleeve, uncapped a vermilion brush, and signed across the worksheet in 2 strokes. Then, below the line, in a smaller hand, he wrote something that was neither name nor date. "What's the mason called?" "Sen," the overseer said. Hanju capped the brush. He looked at Lu Cheng once more, the way Lu Cheng had once eyed a beam he meant to load past its rating, to learn how long before it spoke. "I'll sign for the 48th myself," he said. "I'd like to watch this one seal." He went down the terrace, stick-tapping, and did not look back. The frost on the tool marks had begun to melt. Lu Cheng stood with a dry brush in his fist, the one man on the mountain who read what he read, and that man now knew his hand. The terrace had gone blue with dusk, and the scaffold ribs no longer threw shadows. Bei had climbed up alone to gather the day's chisels, his half-blind face turned toward the sound of his own hands. "Where does it go?" Lu Cheng asked, once the seams shut. Leather creaked as Bei wound oilcloth round a blade. "Up, out the crown. The sect drinks it where the ridgepole sits." He spat over the edge. "You sealed the thing. You tell me." Lu Cheng set 2 fingers to the off-square joint and let the line come. It came the way water comes to a planner who has stared at enough grids, not as light, as pressure. The closed leak's force rose through the second course, found the pier's spine, climbed for the open sky. He had felt that at 100 walls running. He had never once asked what he was asking now. Did it have to go up? He moved his fingers a thumb's width left, down to where the base course met the rubble fill and the old drainage channel ran black and forgotten under the floor. The pressure bent toward his hand. Not much. A thread of it, the thinnest skim, peeling off the main rise because the joint sat a hair off square, the very flaw Hanju had named to the stone. Cut it true and the chi went up whole. Cut it by a measured wrongness and a fraction ran sideways, down into the fill, into the drains, into ground no warden ever put his fingers to. He saw the rest the way he saw a city before it was poured. 47 temples already standing, 47 joints he could not reach now, but the next and the one after, each shaving its thread, each thread running the buried channels to one low place of his choosing. A grid beneath their grid, power they counted as theirs, pooling where they never thought to look. Men were emptied to the marrow for less than reading this. He kept his breathing flat and his hands slow. "You've gone quiet," Bei said. "Quiet masons make me nervous." Cramp. Lu Cheng flexed his cold fingers. "Counting the day's cuts. Count them and come down. Whatever the elder scratched under your name, you don't want Lamplight finding you alone with the work he likes." True, all of it. The risk lay plain in front of him, with its tolerances marked out. One joint, one deniable degree of error, the kind any tired hand might leave. If a thread ran where he sent it, he would know the thing was real. If it didn't, he had a cramped grip and a mason's slip. Nothing a warden could hang a man on. He picked up the smallest chisel, the one for finish work, and set its edge against the off-square joint. "One more cut," he called down, "then I'll come." His thumb found the off-square joint in the dark. He had gone down at dusk, eaten, waited out the singing and the last snores, and climbed back to the roofless 47th when the final lamp in the mason's shed went black. No moon. He worked the base course by touch, fingers reading the seam he had left wrong that afternoon, the old drain breathing its damp under the floor where stone met rubble. 3 clean strokes had sealed this leak true at noon. Now he meant to spoil it by a measured degree. He set the finish chisel a hair off plumb, not enough for any gray master to call sloppy, just enough to bend a thread, and tapped the mallet once. The stone gave a grain. He felt the line move under his other hand before his ear caught anything. The rise off the sealed seam wobbling, leaning, hunting the lower road he had cut. Tap. The corner came away. For one breath, nothing. Then the channel under the floor went warm. Not hot. The warmth of a railing a hand has just left. The warmth of stone that has held a sleeping body. It ran along the dead drain from the pier into the buried fill, into a corridor of footing no one had touched since the pour. And where there had been only cold, there was now a slow, steady pour of something the sect counted as theirs and would never count missing. His palm hovered over the fill. The thread held. A skim off the top of the rise, peeling sideways exactly to read. The valve worked. A foot scraped the terrace above him. He killed the mallet against his thigh and went flat to the cold fill. Lamplight crawled along the scaffold ribs, yellow and swinging, and a watchman's voice, thick with sleep, called a name into the dark. Not his name. He held still while the light dragged across the trench lip and found stacked stone and a tired mason's tools left where a tired mason leaves them. Under his cheek, the corridor breathed warm. Drop that lantern 6 feet and it would find dead footing running hot in a place rock has no business being warm. No gray master could miss it. The cramp, the chisel slip, the slow hand, none of it explained a vein of foundation drinking what belonged up at the ridgepole. The light swung away. Boots went grumbling down the terrace. He breathed and laid his thumb flat to the fill and felt his own warmth waiting there, hidden inside dead rock. The thread he could conceal, the heat he could not. Anyone who knelt where he knelt would feel a corpse of a wall come alive, and the mountain kept one cure for that, drawn slow out of the marrow. He folded the chisel into the cloth at his belt. To spend this, he understood, no living hand could ever touch what he had made. Walk me down your courses, Mason. Morning. The 47th stood in flat gray light, with its crown still open to the sky, and the day crew had not been called up the scaffold yet. The ribs hung wet with dew. Hanju had come alone, hands at his back, the vermilion brush case slung at his hip, in no hurry that showed. Lu Cheng set the water bucket down. From the footing, elder? From the footing. He started low and named his cuts as he climbed, the dry plain way a tired man recites the day's work. The elder followed a pace behind and said nothing through the first 3 courses. Then the questions began, and they were the wrong size for a routine the man kept calling routine. This seam. A finger near it, not touching. Closed when? Noon yesterday. In how many strokes? 3. 3. Hanju crouched, his knees cracking like green wood. Ho would have spent 9 and left it weeping. Show me the first. Lu Cheng laid his thumb to the seam he had sealed true and held his mouth shut about the spoiled joint a hand's width below it. The elder watched the thumb. Not the stone, never the stone, the man working it. They moved to the corner. The off-square joint sat there with its deniable degree of error, fed the buried road no warden knelt to read, and looked like nothing but a finish cut left late. Fresh work. Hanju spread his fingers above it. You ran past the light on this one. It went before I liked it, elder. He laid his whole palm flat against the footing, flat against the dead course where, 6 inches under the fill, the corridor drank and gave its warmth back into rock that had no business holding any. He held it there. 1 breath. 2. Lu Cheng counted his own pulse in his throat and kept his hands loose and let his face stay as bored as his back ached. The elder's eyes went inward, the way they had reading the repair backward through his skin. Under that palm the stone was warm. It had to be. The railing warmth of a thing a sleeping body has just left, in a place that should have been cold as a well. Say it then. Call the name down the scaffold. Reach for the red. Does this corner sit where you meant it? Hanju asked, palm still down. Or where the stone wanted to go? Where I meant it. His thumb pressed the joint once and traced the off-square edge a hair, following the very line the thread ran out along. He could not be reading it. No man read a thread cold from the surface. But his finger walked it true, down to the lip where the chi peeled sideways, and he paused at exactly that lip as if a draft had touched him. Lu Cheng did not breathe. The elder stood, his knees cracked again. He wiped the palm slow down his thigh, the way a man dries a hand he does not like the feel of, and he looked at the warm corner, and then he looked at Lu Cheng a moment past comfort. He did not reach for the vermilion case. He did not call a master. He said none of the words that emptied men to the marrow. Good courses. He turned for the latter. Tight. Elder. The word came out before Lu Cheng chose it, halfway up without turning his head. Keep your hands off the new work today. Let the corner cure cold. It's curing fine. Stone holds a hand's heat longer than you'd think. He climbed into the open light. Tomorrow I'll come feel it. The chisel never left Bay's knee. He sat in the doorway of his shed at the cold foot of the mason's row, a block of soft sandstone braced between his feet, reading the cut he could not see with 2 fingers walked behind the edge. Lu Cheng came down after the day crew scattered, when the bunk lamps went out one by one and no overseer paced the terrace. You passed my row twice with that bucket, Bay said. Heavy both times. You don't waste steps. What did you spill? Nothing. I came to ask about water that isn't there anymore. The fingers stopped on the stone. Plainer. The old drains. Before the sect laid its own channels through the mountain, there were others. Runoff cuts, sumps in the low corners, dead ground that used to carry the rain off. Masons cut them. You'd remember where they run. Bay turned his face up at nothing, milky eyes catching the last lamp. A man asks me about live chi, I send him to a warden, he said. A man asks me about dead water under the temples. He laid the chisel flat. That's a different question. The kind they empty you for thinking. I'm thinking about runoff. You're thinking about somewhere the stone goes that nobody reads. His hand came up, found Lu Cheng's sleeve, climbed to the wrist, and gripped, dry, strong, certain. Don't lie to a blind man with your mouth. I read the rest of you. Liu Cheng held still and let the old hand have his pulse. Look at me, Bei said. You know what the chop cost? The bond took my eyes by halves, drew slow, a season at a stroke, and left me this. Feel and memory and nothing in front of them. He let the wrist go. That's the small price, the small one. I know what it costs. You know the number. That's not knowing. Bei reached out, palm open. Give me your hand. Liu Cheng put it in his. The old fingers turned it over, pressed a thumb hard into the heel of the palm. This is the Great Wall. The thumb slid up. Temples run here, along the spine. The old water, his nail dragged a slow branching line across the skin. Came down off the shoulders, gathered, ran to the low corner at the foot of the grade, where the sect never built because the ground won't carry a foundation. Wet once, forgotten now. Dead. The nail stopped at the base of his fingers. That's your low place, if a man wanted one. Liu Cheng closed his hand around the map. Bei felt it close, and something moved in the ruined face. Not surprise, just a man confirming a weight he'd already lifted. 800 years, Mason. Not one walked out from under. He took the chisel back, settled it across his knee, found his block again by touch. But you didn't climb down here for comfort. You came for the channels. And you'll come for more than that, soon, because a cut made wrong on purpose has to look like a slip, and a sighted man stares at it too long to lie. And a blind one doesn't. A dry sound left him, close to a laugh. A blind one reads it the once and forgets his face ever pointed that way. He set 2 fingers behind the edge of the soft stone and went on carving the cut he could not see. My eyes are spent, my hands aren't. When you've a joint no honest man could shape without flinching at it, bring it down here, to the cold end of the row. Noon laid the shadow of the new row flat across the terrace stone. Liu Cheng was tapping shims under a course when a second shadow crossed his hands, narrow, and stopped. He worked one more stroke, then he set the mallet down. A woman stood over him with a bureau disc cold at her collar and a wax slate under one arm. Chow Yin, spot read. She tipped her chin at the foot of the row. They send a reader through after every audit now. I take the corners the warden sign and skip. The warden took this one himself. Then I find nothing, and we both keep the afternoon. She knelt at the cured corner without asking leave, laid the slate aside, and pressed her bare palm flat on the footing where his seal had gone wrong 2 nights back. He went on shimming. He counted her breaths and kept his own level and watched her hand from the side of his eye. Her fingers spread, then stilled. The first 2 walked an inch toward the joint and leaned, the way a person leans on a floorboard that gave underfoot once before. Huh, she said. Quiet. Something? The rise reads light. She turned her wrist, following a line he could not see and knew by heart, down off the course, sideways, under the grade. It should climb to the crown. Some of it runs. Her chin moved a hair toward the low ground. Out there, into fill, where there's nothing to carry it. 3 breaths, 1 palm. She had found the whole of it. He did not reach for the mallet. He did not crowd the silence. A man who explains a slip has already confessed it. Tired joint, he said. I'll recut it cold. She didn't answer. She sat back on her heels and pressed her thumb to the joint's edge once more, gently, as though checking the fault would still be there in an hour. Her face did nothing he could file. Then she took up the slate. He watched the stylus. 1 word emptied him to the marrow. 2 careful ones closed this corner and brought 4 masters with rods. She held the point above the wax a beat too long. She wrote, Courses sound, rise true. The stylus lifted. She blew a curl of wax off the edge, soft, and tucked the slate under her arm. You read it wrong, he said, carefully. A door left ajar for her to take. I read what I read. She stood, brushing grit from her knee, and her eyes came to his and held, unhurried. And I file what keeps a reader breathing to the next corner. They aren't always cut from the same stone. A gourd hung at her hip. She unstoppered it, drank, and held it out, the first thing either of them had passed to the other. He took it. The clay was warm from her side. "They'll send me back through," she said, already turning for the ladder. "This row, the next, every joint a Warden Vermilion's." She looked once at the cold corner, then at him, and the easy edge went out of her voice. "Cure it well, Mason. My hand's on it now, too." The hammers quit down the hall at once. 40 benches, a floor gone pale with stone dust, low beams strung with cut templates. The Masons' Guild. At the hour the gray masters judged trial pieces. Lu Cheng stood against the back wall. Tian Yu stood at the front, holding his. Master Ho lifted the piece into the window light so the room could read its seam. A lap joint, one stone notched over the next, an iron cramp set blind in the throat. He dropped it on the bench hard enough to ring. "Tinker's work. We fit stone to stone. We don't pin it shut like a coffin lid." Men laughed where they were meant to. Tian Yu's jaw moved. The strongest hands in the room hung flat at his sides, no use at all against a word. "Strike the crap out," Ho said, "and your proud joint gapes by the third frost. Go on, big one, strike it." Lu Cheng crossed the floor. He took the piece off the bench, turned it once, found the buried cramp by the cold line in the grain. "Where does this sit, Tian Yu?" "Course under the lintel. The corner that eats the roof's drift." He looked up at Ho. "A clean fit carries straight down. This carries sideways too. Pull the cramp and the corner walks a hair each winter until the lintel comes down on the prayer mats. The cramp's the cheap part. It's also the part holding your temple over your head." The hall went quiet, the working kind, where men do sums they won't say. "A bookmason," Ho said. "A man who's counted what falls." He set the piece back into Tian Yu's hands, not on the bench. "Crude carries, pretty cracks. Choose which one you'd sleep under." Tian Yu closed both fists around it. He didn't thank him. He stepped off the trial floor and came to stand at Lu Cheng's shoulder, close, the way muscle picks its side and stays there. A staff struck the threshold twice. The room rose before anyone told it to. Han Ju came in out of the daylight with the vermilion stick in his hand, unhurried, reading faces as he passed them. He laid a fresh slate on the master's bench and let his palm rest on it. "Words come down," he said, mild, to all of them. "Too many tired joints this season. Honest hands, weary work. A reader kneels, a reader misses." His eyes settled on Lu Cheng and held. "So, from the new moon, a joint won't witness a contract on its own. The warden reads the carved face. Every seal cut into the ornament, and the ornament stands as the bond." Lu Cheng kept his hand still and felt the ground move under the plan. A wrong joint hid in shadow, under grade, where no one looked. A carved face looked back at everyone. "A man can lose a tired joint in a wall," Han Ju said. "No one loses a carving. Whatever your hands have to say it in the stone where it shows." He turned the vermilion stick once between two fingers. "I'll witness yours myself, Mason." The row slept. The guild hall and Han Ju's vermilion stick were hours behind him now, and he waited until the last cough died at the cold end before he dragged the trestle board onto his knees. He set the lamp low. It would not throw him on the wall that way. Chalk in hand, he drew the city the only way he had ever trusted it, as water, as flow. 47 marks went down along the old line, each one a temple, each one leaking its hair of chi sideways into the dead drains Bay had named for him in the dark. He joined them with single strokes. The lines all wanted to run the same way, up and inward, toward the reservoir under the sect's hill, the way the binding hauled every sealed year home. Under his thumb, he laid the counterline. He held the chalk there and did not breathe. You don't turn a grid by fighting every joint. You set one valve at the lowest mouth and let the whole thing turn itself. He marked it below the curve, where the drains emptied, on ground no temple had ever stood on. The 48th, Han Ju's own. He built it out in full on the board, true on its face, every coarse square for the warden's palm to bless, and beneath that face, a throat cut to swallow the entire diverted load and throw it backward, chi running down the meridians instead of up, the reservoir falling, the bonds going slack on 47 floors at one stroke. Then he counted the seals. He counted them twice because the first sum was one he wanted wrong. A valve that deep took a deep seal, and a deep seal drew years, not months. He tallied the ink along the corner. 7. He turned his wrist over, looked at the coin of scar on it, and did the other sum, what was left in him to spend. 7, by the same chalk, the last of it. "You've stopped writing," Bay said from the dark. He hadn't heard the old man cross the floor. Bay carried no lamp. He had no use for one. His hand found the board's edge, then Lu Chang's wrist, 2 fingers on the pulse, the way he read everything. Slow, steady, a pause. "You've decided something. Show me the corner that frightens you." Lu Chang took the blind fingers and set them on the chalk valve at the bottom of the grid. "Here, the last contract. I seal this one myself, on its face, where the warden stands and watches, and it spends what's left of me down to the year." Bay's thumb moved once across the mark and stilled. "Build it half," he said. "Leave it short. Live. Half a valve holds nothing. It turns the whole grid or it turns nothing." He drew the old man's hand off the board and let it go. "Whole, or I don't cut it at all." The lamp shuddered and steadied. He wet the chalk and went back over the 7th seal until the line stood hard and clear. The shape was fixed now, and fatal, and his. "Then I carved the face beside you," Bay said. "Then we start the 48th. Frost still sat in the spoil heap when Hanju came down the cut with a stranger at his heel. Lu Cheng was on his knees at the throat of the new tunnel, setting a course by feel, the floor too cold yet for chalk to take. He heard the staff before he saw the man. 2 taps on the lip of the trench. "Mason?" Hanju did not come down. He stood at the rim with the daylight behind him and the vermilion stick idle in his fist. "You're 3 gangs now, and short of hands. I found you one." The stranger climbed down into the cut. Broad, weathered, a face that had been outdoors most of a life. He carried his own mallet and a roll of cold cutters, and he set them in the dry corner off the wet floor without being shown where. A mason's habit. Lu Cheng marked it and said nothing. "Wen Liang," the man said, "off the river wall cruise." He put out a hand. Lu Cheng took it. Calluses where calluses belonged, the ridge of them hard along the first knuckle, a thumbnail split and growing back. Every mark a stonecutter's hand should carry, it carried. He let it go, said the gang would be glad of him, and meant none of it. Hanju watched the handshake from the rim. He watched it the way he watched a course go down, to see whether it sat true. Then he turned the stick once and went up toward the light. That was the thing Lu Chang kept. The warden had walked one man down himself to one trench out of a yard of 300 and stayed to see the hand taken. Wen worked. He worked well, which was worse. Lu Chang set him on the dry upper course, far from the dead corner, far from the throat, and watched his back through the morning. The man cut clean. He asked nothing, hummed nothing, kept his eyes on his own line. By noon, Lu Chang had half talked himself out of it. Then Wen reached past him for the long level. His bare palm went flat on the cured corner as he leaned, where the load ran warm under the stone, and it stayed there a breath too long, the way a man lays his hand to a kettle to be sure it's hot, before he took the level and moved off down the cut. Lu Cheng kept his face on his work and his trowel moving. The mortar went down a shade thick. He scraped it back and laid it again. At the rest, he sat against the spoil with cold millet and watched the gang break around the new man. Tian Yu took to him first, the way Tian Yu took to anyone who laughed at his jokes, and he shared out his bowl and talked. Lu Cheng could not hear all of it across the trench. He heard enough. He heard Sen, and he heard the warm ones. Tian Yu's broad hand sweeping toward the row of sealed corners, proud, glad of a new ear. That's his, and that one, the joints that read tired. Nobody cuts a tired joint like our Sen. The millet went dry in Lu Cheng's mouth. He could not cross the trench and tell Tian Yu to close his teeth. To warn the man was to hand him the secret hole, to say there is a thing here worth hiding and you have just shown the bureau where it lives. Tian Yu's loyalty was real, and that was the trap of it. A loyal man with an open mouth was a wider door than any enemy. Wen rose, dusted his knees, and came along the trench to where Lu Chang sat. He crouched, easy, his voice low under the noise of the gang. Good ground this corner, quiet. He nodded at the warm stone he'd touched. Warden says you read it best of any hand in the yard. I'd learn it off you, if you'd teach. Lu Chang looked at the Calluses and at the river wall crew that no one here had ever named, and understood that he no longer knew which hand beside him was the warden's. Every man in the cut could end him by morning. Down tools, every face to the light. The call ran up the cut at first gray, before the frost lifted off the spoil. Hanju's runner first, then Hanju himself. The yard climbed up out of its trenches, and the masons stood their carved lintels along the hall road, faces to the east, the way goods get laid out for a buyer to walk. Lu Chang set his trowel on the lip and went up with the rest. Wen Liang rose at his shoulder, close and easy, and said nothing. Down the line he found Tianyu's wide back and, past it, Bei's white eyes turned the wrong way to the sun. Hanju walked the row. He held the vermilion stick low and read each face as he passed, not the joints now, the carved ornament, the vines and cloud bands that stood as the bond under his own new decree. He stopped at none of them. He let the quiet do the work, every mason behind those faces counting his own cuts. Then he stopped at an old man's lintel, third from the end. Wen Sheng. Gray at the temple, 30 years cutting the same cloud band, a hand so steady the apprentices set their levels by his eye. Hanju crouched and ran his thumb along a curl of carved vine and held there. Whose witness is this? Mine, warden. The old man came out of the line. Cut it myself. Read it. I am reading it. Hanju rose. The third leaf turns in where its fellows turn out, a bond that reads two ways. He tapped the stone once. False witness carved into the face. Lu Chang looked at the leaf. From 6 feet off he could see it carried true. The vine ran even, the chi sat quiet along it, no more crooked than the 9 beside it. The flaw was a word. Hanju had laid it on clean stone the way a brand goes onto a clean hide, and called it found. He knew why. The warden had walked the whole row and turned up nothing, nothing of the real thing. The throat 30 feet down the cut under Lu Cheng's own hand. So he made a flaw where it cost him nothing, on a careful old man with no friends loud enough to matter, and called 300 masons to watch him make it. Its sound, Wen Sheng's voice came up out of him cracked. I cut that leaf before you wore the red, hand. The old man did not give it. 2 warders turned his wrist up, and the coin-sized mark sat there gray in the cold, and Hanju set the end of the vermilion stick against it. Lu Cheng felt the draw before he saw it. The chi went out of the man the way water leaves a cut mane, fast, then faster. A pull he read in his own back teeth from 6 feet off. Wen Sheng's knees let go. The gray at his temple ran down through the rest of his hair in 3 breaths. The skin drew in over the bone, and the steady carving hand curled shut and stayed shut. He made no sound going down. That much, at least, Hanju had named right. The word sat ready in Lu Cheng's mouth. The leaf is sound. I'll read it for the yard. 1 sentence, and the old man stood up again. 1 sentence, and the stick turned from a dead man to the hand that read stone best in the yard, and from that hand to the throat in the cut, and the whole load came down at once. Bei, Qiaoyin, Tianyu, 7 years and 1 buried valve. He kept his teeth together. He watched the spoil dust settle on a face that had been whole at dawn, for a flaw that was nothing, while the real flaw lay 30 feet off where no one had thought to look. Wen Liang was not watching the old man. He was watching Lu Cheng's face, to see whether it sat true. Lu Cheng gave him the flat of it and nothing else. Down the row, Hanju's stick tapped on toward the next clean lintel. The old man cooled on the hall road. Lu Cheng had cut that flaw himself. The lamp sat low on the throat stone. Lu Cheng came down the ladder because the runner had said come, and there was no shape of refusing that ended with him still breathing. Dusk had gone to dark in the cut, 30 feet of frost-black trench, the other warder sent up top, and at the bottom of it, Han Ju alone, his red coat folded over one knee. Sit. He sat on the spoil heap. Cold came up through his trousers from the stone he'd worked all day. Han Ju did not look at him. He turned his own hand over in the lamplight, palm up, the way he'd turned the old man's wrist that morning, and where a bond mark sits, there was a coin of white scar, seamless, burned out long ago. You think I never carried one? No triumph in it. I cut my first lintel at 9, Riverwall crew, the same dead men no one in your yard can name. The scarred hand closed. I read a siphon before you could hold a chisel, better than you read yours. Then you walked out. I climbed the hill to walk out. He laid a worn spot reader's pick on the throat stone between them. 40 of us cut a valve into the old reservoir wall, not below the mouth, we hadn't the eye for it. We cut where we could reach, and we threw the load, and for one breath, every bond on every floor went slack. The wick guttered. He let it. One breath. Then the wall took the whole load with no throat to swallow it, and the chi came back up the meridians into the men who'd just gone free. He set the pick down square. I buried 31 of them on ground no temple stands on. I patched the seam myself the next winter, on my knees, so the boys after wouldn't find it and try. Lu Cheng looked at the unfinished throat under their boots, then at the scar. You set the valve where you could reach, not the lowest mouth. That's why the wall took it back. I know where I set it. Something moved behind the flat of his face. I've watched you sight yours. Below the curve, dead ground, true on the face. Cleaner than mine ever was. It might hold the breath a little longer. His jaw worked once. Long enough for them to feel the slack and believe it. That's the cruelty in your cut. They die certain they're free. He stood and caught the red coat off his knee without looking down. I'll say this once and not dress it. The throat is yours. I knew it at the 47th, from the heat off your bad joint, before Wen Liang, before the guild. He set his boot on the throat stone, light, the way a man tests river ice. Fill it. Tonight. Cut it true all the way down, a temple that hauls up like the other 47. And tomorrow, you read stone for the whole bureau at my hand. No mark on you, no bond. The blind one keeps his fingers. The slow ox keeps his loyalty and his neck. The girl files her readings and grows old in this yard. And the men on the 47 floors go on breathing, which is more than your valve leaves them. He didn't lift his voice. I am the only man living who threw that load and walked off the hill to bury what it costs. Believe one true thing from me, Mason. The bond is the only reason any of them woke this morning. He climbed 2 rungs and stopped. The lamp threw his shadow long up the trench. Fill it by the new moon. Refuse, and I read your throat the way I read the old man's leaf, and I take your whole crew down with it, the blind one first. A breath. 3 days to decide which of us is the liar. How long did your slack hold before the wall fed on the men? Lu Cheng stayed on the spoil heap. Han Ju, 2 rungs up, half turned, and the lamp caught the white coin burned into his palm. One breath. I said one breath. Because you cut where your arm would reach. He let that sit in the cold. You opened a valve in the wall's flank and gave the load nowhere to fall. No throat under the mouth. The wall took it back because you'd built it nothing else to take, so it took the men. He laid his hand flat on the frost-black throat stone between his boots. Mine has somewhere to send it. That's the whole difference. You read it on my bad joint at the 47th, and it's why you came down to buy me instead of bury me. Han Ju came back down a rung. It will hold the breath, Mason. Then it does what mine did, only slower. You don't know that. You never cut the mouth, you cut the reach. Lu Cheng stood, knees stiff with the cold he'd sat into. You buried 31 and decided the grave was the lesson. It wasn't. The sighting was. For a moment, neither of them moved. The wick had burned down to a bead. "Fill it true," Hanju said, "and live." "No." The word came out small in the trench and threw back no echo. "I'll cut it the way I sighted it, whole, to the mouth." He took the spot reader's pick off the stone and held it out, handle first. "You'll want this. You're reading against me now, and you should do it with your own tool." Hanju did not take it. He looked at the throat under their boots a long moment, a man counting courses he had not laid, and something in his face closed like a door drawn quiet so the house won't wake. 3 days, he said. Then I read it false and take them down, the blind one first. Then we've nothing left to whisper. Lu Cheng dropped the pick on the spoil. Read loud, I'll cut louder. He went up the ladder first, and Hanju led him. Up top, 3 of them waited in the dark. Bei sat on the lintel stack with his blind face turned to the cut, listening for which man came up the rungs. Tian Yu had a maul across his knees, held after curfew, against every rule in the yard. Qiao Yin stood apart from both, the bureau disc cold at her collar, the wax slate blank in her hand. They read his face for the verdict. He gave them the plain of it instead. He knows the throat is mine. He's offered me a clean coat and a bondless name to fill it true and let it kill the floors slow. Lu Cheng kept his voice under the wind. I told him no. 3 days, then he reads it false and walks us all to the wall. Bei at the front. Tian You's hands whitened on the maul. Then we run it tonight, throw the load and go. We don't run, we finish. He crouched and drew the cut in the spoil dust with one finger, the mouth, the dead corner, the uncut courses above it. By light, he'll have a warder on every course, reading for a flaw he's already decided to find. So we stop hiding from him. 3 gangs, no chalk. The floor won't take it cold. I set the throat by feel. Bei sets the warm ones blind, down where no carved face can witness a bond. He looked up at Qiao Yin. After he signs a course, you reread it and file it true. His false reading and your true one can't both stand in one ledger. Make the bureau choose. Her thumb moved once across the cold disc. The first slate I file true, he knows I've turned. He knew before any of us did. Lu Cheng straightened. There's no quiet contract left between him and me. From tonight, we build it in his teeth, course over course, faster than he can mark. Bei turned his ruined eyes toward the sound of him. Whole? Whole, to the mouth. Then put my hands on the stone. He was already standing, reaching for the rail he knew by feel. Lu Cheng lifted the chisel and set its edge against the dawn-cold throat. Wake all 3 gangs. The first fine came at second bell. Lu Cheng knelt in the cut, betting the throat stone by feel, when Hanju's shadow crossed the course and held there. He carried no maul this time. A wax slate, a bureau stylus, and at his shoulder a clerk with the red cord of the lifespan ledger wound twice around one wrist. Mason Lu. Hanju read off the slate, flat as a man pricing grain. Course laid without chalk, against yard order. Penalty correction, 1 year, levied on your bond. The stylus scratched. The clerk drew the cord tight. Something left Lu Cheng's wrists. Not pain, a withdrawal. A rope pulled through the marrow and out at the fingertips, and he set the stone down before his hands could spill it. Tian Yu came off the lintel stack. He can't find a man's. He can write what he likes. Lu Cheng didn't turn. Stay on the mall, Hanju read on. Worker kept past curfew, worker unfit for record, blindness undeclared. A pause to let the cord catch up. 2 corrections, 2 years. This pull went deeper, past the wrists into the chest, and a cough took him, dry, then wet. He spat into the spoil. A dark thread lay in it. He stood slower than he meant to. At the water bucket he bent to rinse his mouth and saw his own face shake on the surface, gray come in at both temples, where the hair had been black when he climbed down the ladder at dawn. He looked up at Hanju across the rim of the bucket. You've stopped reading the wall. I read it every course. No. Lu Cheng wiped his mouth on his wrist. You read it 3 days, and it held, and that frightened you. So you put the slate away and picked up the ledger. He nodded at the red cord. You can't prove the throat false, so you'll spend me before I can cut it true. For a breath, the stylus stayed off the wax. Then Hanju wrote, "Improper instruction of a bureau scribe." He did not look at Xiao Yin. 1 year. The cord bit a 4th time. Lu Cheng's knee buckled, found the spoil, held. Xiao Yin's hand went to her slate and stopped there, white at the knuckle, because to read a course true now was to draw the next fine onto his name with her own stylus. "File it," he told her. "Quiet. Same as we said, every course true. It's costing you the, I know what it costs." He pushed up off the wet stone. His hands were an old man's hands on a young man's arms. He watched them find the next throat stone and lift it anyway, slower, the strength running out of them like water from a cracked trough. "Bei, down here, set the warm ones while these still hold weight." Bei was already feeling for the rungs. Hanju stepped back to let the blind man pass, and that small courtesy was worse than the slate. He had decided the sum. He was only waiting now for the body to agree to it. "Cut, Mason," Hanju said. "I'll keep the account." Lu Cheng laid his grayed temple against the cold stone to sight the bed, and breathed shallow so the cough would keep. 3 days he'd promised them. He had fewer years than that left in his chest now, and more courses to the mouth than years. He set the chisel and struck. 3 nights on, 60 feet under the cut, the branch turned on them. Lu Cheng felt it before the lamps did, a thread of cold across his boot, then the bedstone humming under his palm the way a wall hums wrong under a load it can't hold. He read it twice to be sure. The seep had pressure behind it. "Up, now!" He hauled Bei upright by the shoulder. "Tools stay!" Tianyou's maul stopped mid-swing. 2 courses to the link. They're at the plug. Above them, at the branch mouth, a lamp swung and steadied. Hanju's voice came down the shaft, flat and unhurried, reading off something that wasn't a wax slate anymore. "Northwest gallery, throat plug, 3rd bend. A breath, for the clerk to mark it. Knock it through." A maul fell somewhere upstream, not theirs, not in this branch, and Lu Cheng heard the plug stone go the way a green joint goes. 1 crack, then all the noise that lives behind the crack. The cold at his boot climbed to a wall. Water came in low and black and fast. "Bei, rungs are at your right hand." He pressed the blind man's fingers to the iron himself. "Climb, don't wait on me." Bei went up fast, hands that lived by feel finding each rung before his weight asked for it. Tianyou shoved the lintel bar clear and followed. The water climbed faster than men do. It took Lu Cheng's knees, then his waist, cold enough to stop the breath, and the cough he'd held all shift broke loose into it with a dark thread in the spittle. His hands closed on the iron. They were an old man's hands now, and they failed like one. The strength ran out of his grip the way water runs from a cracked trough, and on the 4th rung, his fingers opened on their own. The flood had his shoulders. "Reach!" Tianyou hung upside down in the shaft throat, one arm hooked through the rungs, the other down in the dark. "Reach, master!" Lu Cheng got a wrist on him. Tianyou pulled. The branch let go with a long suck of air from somewhere deeper, and then he was over the lip on his belly, spitting river onto the spoil. Below them, the shaft filled to within an arm of the top and held there. Level, black, still. 3 weeks of cutting lay under it. The link to the next gallery, the bedded throats, the warm stones Bei had set blind down where no carved face could witness a bond. All of it drowned now, dead weight, gone soft in the cold. At the branch mouth, Hanju rolled the map closed against his thigh and tied it off with the red cord. He did not hurry. He had the line of it now, on paper, in his fist, every gallery they'd trusted the dark to keep. 1 branch read true, he said. The rest read the same. The lattice was a secret no longer. Boots came down the duckboards, 4 pairs, out of step. Lu Cheng was awake before the lantern reached the canvas. 3 nights since the flood, and he still slept sitting, back to the cut wall, because his chest worked easier upright. The light pushed in through the lean-to's open end and found the crew where they lay. Tianyou near the post, the 2 pit hands, Bei furthest in, curled toward a brazier he could not see. Hanju came in behind the lantern. He had the map under his arm, red cord still tied, and a younger officer at his shoulder carrying a bureau roll and a stylus. "Don't stand," Hanju said. Nobody had. I've come for one man. Take your fine and go. Lu Cheng kept the cough sitting low where it lived now. Not a fine tonight. He nodded the young officer forward. The record carries a worker with sound eyes. The crew carries one without. A blind man's mark on a bond is no mark at all. Every course he betted reads false from the root. He looked at the shape by the brazier. Wake him. Tian Yo was up off the boards. Lu Cheng put a flat hand on his chest without turning, and the big man stopped against it, breathing through his teeth. Bei was already sitting. He'd counted the boots too. I'll come, he told the dark, toward the lamp. Let me find my sandals. The officer hauled him up by the arm before he could. Bei's free hand went out, found nothing, found the man's wrist, and let itself be lifted. Here was the seam, and Lu Cheng read it the way he read a bedstone under load. One word would hold Bei. He could claim the warm stones for his own hands, swear he had bedded every throat in the deep galleries himself, that the blind man had never bonded a course, and Hanju would set the map down and pick up that lie like a chisel, and read it open inside a day, and own the whole lattice and every name cut into it instead of one. Save the man, spend the work. Spend the work, the crew goes under with the work. The numbers came out the same, however he turned them. He hated the answer. Master. Bei, low, while the officer scratched at his roll. Don't. I haven't said anything. You're about to. I can hear you thinking it. Something dry in the worst of it, almost a smile. Keep cutting, that's the wage. Hanju watched the two of them and missed none of it. Sentiment in a work gang, he said. I'll note it cost you nothing. Lu Cheng got his feet under him. The strength came slow, the way it came now, an old man's strength borrowed late and given back early. He stood. He did not speak. That was the whole of what he did, and it took more out of him than the chisel had. The officer turned Bei toward the open end. Bei went easy, finding the lip of the boards with one bare foot before his weight asked for it, then the cold spoil, then the slope up out of the cut, sure of every step in the dark he had always lived in, surer than the men who gripped him. Bei, it was out before he could weigh it. Right hand, rope at the second post. Bei's fingers found the rope, steadied. He walked himself up it into the lantern's edge, and then past the edge, and the light went with him, and the canvas dimmed behind. Hanju stayed a breath in the doorway, the map under his arm, the account closed in his fist. You promised them a true throat, he said. You've one fewer pair of hands to cut it. Then the canvas fell back to black, and the brazier's heat had nowhere left to reach, and the place by the fire where the blind man had slept held the shape of him and nothing else. You'll set it down in your own hand. Hanju laid the map flat on the filing board and weighted its corners with 2 stones from the spoil. First light at the head of the cut. Qiao Yin stood at her board where she filed each course, the stylus still warm from the night's work, the bureau roll unspooled at her elbow. Lu Cheng had come up the duckboards to breathe. Tian Yu stood at his shoulder, fists loose, watching the officer the way he watched a stone that might drop. The young officer set a fresh slate beside her own. The lattice, he said, every bonded gallery. By her mark it stands as record. And if I don't write? She did not make it a question. Hanju spoke low, the way he always had. Then the 2 on the east spur file false from this morning, chalkless, a curfew kept and broken. Their bonds carry it. He counted it off his fist, no slate now. Both go gray by the next bell. Spend them, or spend a line of ink. Lu Cheng watched her hand. The stylus turned once between her fingers and stopped. He knew what she knew. The drowned branch in the northwest was dead weight, 60 feet of it under cold water, no living bond left bedded there to break. The warm core ran east and south, names cut deep, men who still drew breath above it. Hanju's fist already held the northwest. He'd read it, flooded it, owned it. What he could not get from a fist was a scribe's true mark to seal the reed. She could give him the dead and call it the spine. Qiao Yin, Tian Yu, barely a sound. Don't put us on his paper. Quiet, Lu Cheng said. She bent to the map. Her stylus found the northwest mouth and ran the drowned line down, every bend true, the third plug, the bed where the flood still stood. She marked the abandoned spur off the second bend, the one they'd given up in the first week, and named the masons who'd bedded its courses, men a month gone from the gang. The same clean hand that had filed them all true filled the bureau roll now, stroke after even stroke, and Hanju leaned in and read it from his fist and found it sound, because it was sound, because she had not lied in a single mark. She had only chosen which truth to set down. The east spur she left blank, the south galleries, the warm core, the live names. Her stylus did not go near them. Tian Yu saw the moving hand and nothing else. He saw the roll filling under the officer's eye, her steady strokes feeding the bureau line by line, and his jaw set and he stepped back from her as from a thing gone bad. "You're filing us," he said. "True as you ever filed a course." Tian Yu, "Don't." He spat on the spoil and turned his shoulder to her. She did not explain. She could not, with Hanju a foot off and reading every word that left her mouth. Her face held flat. The cost of it stood in her knuckles, white around the stylus, and she did not loosen them. Hanju rolled the slate and bound it with the red cord. "A clean record," he said. "I'll note the scribe cooperates." He set the words down where Tian Yu would catch them and let them land. "Her mark seals the northwest. The rest comes by the same hand." He had the dead branch and believed he had her. He left the lie hanging for the crew to breathe, and went up the slope with her true work under his arm. Tian Yu would not look at her again. The circle had a crack in it now. It ran straight through the warmest hand. The order came on cedar, the date scorched in with a hot iron. 8 days. Hanju carried it down to the head of the cut himself and nailed it to the prop. 4 square strokes. The hammer lifted off Tian Yu's bench without a word. The gang watched from the duckboards and said nothing. "Every bonded man stands his own course at the consecration," he said. "All galleries open. Every bond reads together, in one bell." Lu Cheng set his palm to the cut wall and let it give him the number. He had cut the lattice to bleed. Consecrate the mouth, and it would draw qi up through the joints the way a flue pulls smoke off a banked fire. And the gang had meant to be gone east when it drew. The warm core out through the broken drain, the reed climbing the dead northwest to find cold water and no living hand. 8 days was enough cutting for that. He had counted it twice. Then Hanju came down the gallery with a pot of black wax and a thin iron, and he began to seal the throats. He pressed the bureau mark into the mouth of the east spur, thumbed it flat. He moved to the south branch and did the same, bend by bend, naming each course and the man bonded to it as he set the seal, so Qiao Yin's stylus had to chase him or leave a gap that read false on its own. "What's the wax do?" Tian Yu said. He drifted back to her shoulder without seeming to choose it. "Holds them shut till the day." Hanju warmed the last seal under his thumb and stepped clear of it. "On the day, I break them. In order. Each man standing his course when his bond reads children, or the gap stands where the man should." He turned his head to Lu Cheng, slow. "You'll have your throat cut true by then, and I'll have every hand that cut it lined up where I can read them at once." Lu Cheng pressed harder on the stone and felt the plan turn over under his fingers. The drain still ran. The breakthrough still held east, dry, open. A sealed throat does not lift from the inside, though, and a man not standing his course at the reed left a hole the exact width of his name. Walk out, and you filed false from the floor. Stay, and you stood in the lattice while the draw climbed and the bureau counted you living, every blank she'd left, now filled in warm flesh. He took his hand off the wall. A cough came up dark-threaded, and he held it behind his teeth. 8 days, he said to no one. Hanju gathered his iron and his wax pot and went up the slope, and behind him the seals cooled to hard black in every mouth Lu Cheng had opened, and the long cut they had dug to carry the gang out under the river was a single room now, with one door, and the officer climbing away from it held the only key. Something cold touched his wrist. He had not moved from the wall. Up the slope, the last of Hanju's lamps swung out of the cut, and the gallery went dim, and the seals in every mouth set hard and black, and Lu Cheng stood with his palm flat on the throat stone and waited for his breath to come back. It came back wet. Down low, near the floor, where the course met old bedrock, a thread of cold drew across the back of his hand that the wax had not put there. A thread of cold. Moving. He knelt. His knees took it badly, and he let them. The seep came through a hair-fine seam below the lowest cut course, not a chisel line, not a joint any hand had bedded. A crack the river had opened on its own long before the gang put iron to this hill. "You'll founder down there," Tian Yu said. He had not gone up with the others. He stood at the duckboards with his arms folded, watching the old man kneel in the wet, his voice carrying the flatness it kept now for everyone. "Hanju's gone. Nothing left to read tonight." Lu Cheng wet 2 fingers and held them to the seam. The draft pulled at them, steady, drawing toward the mouth. It drew. That was the whole of it. "Bring the lamp." Tian Yu didn't move. "For what?" "Bring it." The boy brought it, because 30 years of taking the order moved his feet before his temper could stop them. He crouched, sullen, and held the flame to the floor where Lu Cheng pointed. The flame leaned. It bent toward the rock and lay over and streamed thin into the seam, as if a door stood open under the stone. "There's air going out there," Tian Yu said slowly. "There's air going out there." Lu Cheng sat back on his heels and pressed his thumb to the seam and read what the water had cut. His mind went up the gallery, to every black seal cooling in every mouth, each one stamped over a course some bonded hand had laid, each one named, each one waiting to break in its order on the day. Hanju had walked the full length of the cut. He had sealed everything a chisel made. He had sealed nothing the river made. He counts the cuts. The cough rose and he swallowed it whole. Every throat a man opened, he's named and waxed. He reads marks. A bond is a mark. A course is a mark. A seal sits on a mark. So, there's no mark here. He took Tian Yu's wrist, the same grip the boy had used on him on the rungs, when the river took the northwest and his old hands let go of the iron, and pressed it down to the cold seam. No hand cut this. No bond names it. He can seal a throat we dug. He can't seal a crack the water dug, because it was never on a roll to begin with. A man goes out this seam, there's no course he failed to stand, no gap the width of his name. The warden reads nothing, because there's nothing to read. Tian Yu's arm went still under his hand. Lu Cheng looked at the seam and understood, late and cold, why he had cut every channel but this one. He'd planned his way out of a cage by cutting a better door, the way a mason does, the way a man does, who has lived so long inside the lines that he forgets the lines were drawn at all. Hanju thought the same. The warden had built his whole trap out of cuts, and never once reached for the one channel no hand had chosen to make. "The water already left," Lu Cheng said. "We follow the water." Dawn came gray through the mouth of the cut. The masons stood at their courses already, each man on the stone he had laid, breath smoking in the cold. And at the head of the gallery, 3 elders set the tribute jars along a plank of cedar and thumbed the wax from the necks. No one spoke. The river ran low under the floor, and you could hear it. Lu Cheng knelt at the lowest course, where the seam drew its cold thread across old bedrock. In his hands, a throat stone, cut thin, no thicker than 2 fingers. He set it dry. No bed of lime, no peg, no mark of the trowel. He had sized it through the night to the gap over the seam, and now he walked it down with the heel of his hand until it sat flush with the course on either side, and it read like every stone he had ever bedded in 30 years. It would lift out under a child's grip. "He's coming down the line," Tian Yu said, a pace off, his back turned, coiling rope he did not need to coil. Hanju came down the gallery with his wax pot kept warm against his ribs and his stylus out, reading each bond as he passed, naming each course aloud for the scribe at his heel. Qiao Yin wrote what he said. She did not look toward the floor, and Tian Yu did not look toward her, and the air between the two of them was its own sealed thing. The warden stopped over Lu Cheng. His shadow fell cold across the wet stone. This course. Hanju crouched. He laid 2 fingers flat on the dry stone Lu Cheng had set not a quarter hour before and pressed his weight down through them. The stone held. Lu Cheng had cut it to a hair, and a stone cut true sits true, whether you mortar it or leave it bare. And the seam beneath drew its cold breath out toward the river and gave nothing away. The warden felt solid rock. He felt a finished wall. His stylus moved. He stamped the black wax across the joint, over the false stone, over the seam below it that carried no mark and never would carry one, and spoke it for the page. Lowest course, west return. Sealed. Behind him the stylus scratched. Chow Yin set it down. A stone laid sound, a seal struck clean, a bonded man standing his own course at dawn. All true, all of it a lie with the warden's own hand on the wax. Han Jue rose, knees cracking, and held Lu Cheng in his look a beat past comfort. You finished early. Stone doesn't keep the bell's hours, Lu Cheng said. A short nod, the warden went on up the line, naming the next man and the next. Tian Yo let his breath go slow through his teeth. He sealed it himself. He sealed it himself. Lu Cheng pressed his thumb to the warm wax cooling on the false stone and felt the cold pulling steady underneath it, out and away. When the bond broke in its order, the seal would read whole and the door would come up in their hands. At the head of the cut, an elder lifted the first jar two-handed. The tribute caught the gray light, dark and slow as cooled iron, and he tilted it to the throat of the keystone and began to pour. Down the whole length of the gallery, the qi woke in the joints and started to climb, course by sealed course, toward the mouth. Everything stood where he had put it. Nothing in the cut was safe. The second jar went up. A second elder lifted it from the cedar plank, two-handed, and tilted it into the keystone after the first, and the dark tribute slid down the throat of the stone with a sound like oil finding a wick. Lu Cheng kept his eyes on the lowest course. He did not watch the jars. He watched the joints. They were taking it. Up the gallery, the qi climbed the bedded stone the way water climbs a rope, slow and certain, course feeding course. Each black waxed seal warming as it passed. He had cut the flue for this. He had bled the lattice 8 days ago so the draw would pull up the dead northwest and out toward cold water. And the stone was doing now exactly what the stone had been built to do. He could feel it through his knees. A faint thrum, low and even, no flutter in it, no flutter anywhere but here. At his own course, the false stone sat dry over the seam, and the seam breathed its cold thread out toward the river. And where every other joint drew the qi up and held it, this one let a thin draft go sideways into the dark. A leak the width of a hair, nothing a man would feel. Han Ju felt it. He had reached the fourth course from the head when he stopped. Lu Cheng saw it in the back of him. The wax pot still warm against his ribs, the stylus gone idle in his hand, his head tipping a degree as though a voice had said his name from the wrong direction. The elders poured. A third jar emptied into the keystone, and the thrum in the floor stepped up a note, and every man on his course stood straighter under it, breath smoking, and Han Ju alone turned his face down toward the stone and listened to something that did not match. Hold the tribute, he said. The elder at the plank looked up, the next jar already in his arms. The bell struck. It pours till it's poured. I said, hold. The old man set the jar down on the cedar. The gallery went quiet under the running of the river, and the qi kept climbing, because qi does not heed a man's voice. And Han Ju crouched and laid his palm flat to the fourth course and shut his eyes. Lu Cheng counted his own breath and made it slow. Tian Yu had stopped coiling. He stood with the rope dead in his hands and his back half turned, watching the warden out of the side of his face the way you watch a load that has begun, very quietly, to move. There's a draw in it, Han Ju said. Not to the elders. To the stone. Somewhere it's pulling sideways. Tribute draws up. The elder's voice had gone thin. It's meant to climb. Up, yes. Han Ju opened his eyes. He did not look at the keystone. He looked down the line, course by course, the way Lu Cheng read a wall for the one stone set wrong, past the fourth, past the third, down the long gray reach of bedded courses toward the lowest, where a mason knelt with his thumb on cooling wax and his face turned to nothing. The warden rose. He started back down the gallery, slow, against the climb of the Qi, toward the seam he had sealed with his own hand. The wax under his thumb had gone cold. Han Ju came down the line, course by course, against the climb, and Lu Cheng kept his knee on the lowest stone and did not turn to meet him. The Qi went up, past them both. He felt it in the bedding, that low, even thrum stepping higher with each emptied jar, the whole wall drinking, the draw hauling hard for the mouth overhead. Then the thrum bent, not louder, lower. The note dropped the way a hauling rope drops when the load on the far end touches ground, and the climb that had been pulling up the gallery caught at his course and turned over. He spread his hand on the false stone and felt the seam take it. The cold thread was a thread no longer. It had opened to a draw of its own, broad and patient, and where the dry stone had leaked a hair sideways, it now took everything the courses below had gathered and bent it down, under the lowest bedded course, into the river seam, out toward water that no iron had touched and no wax could close. "Hold," Han Ju said again. The elder had already set his jar on the plank, but the one still in the keystone's throat ran on into a wall that no longer climbed. Lu Cheng watched the joints. Up the gallery, the black wax on the throat stones had stopped warming. One seal, then the next, cooled gray and went dull. The Qi that should have set them draining off downhill before it ever reached the names. A man 3 courses up put a hand to his own chest, slow, the way you feel for a coin gone from a pocket. The pull on him had quit. Han Ju reached the lowest course and went down on one knee in the wet. He did not look at Lu Cheng. He laid his palm to the false stone the way he had an hour before, and Lu Cheng saw the moment the reading turned wrong under his hand, the head tipping, the search going past the stone, past the wax, down to the cold mouth in the bedrock that carried no mark at all. "There is nothing here to break," Han Ju said. "No." His thumb moved over the seam, hunting a line, a course, a bond, any edge a seal could sit on. The stone gave him cutwork above and old broken rock below, and between them, the seam the river had opened before any of them drew breath. He set his stylus to it. The wax would not take. There was nothing to write on. "Seal the leak, officer," the elder called, the empty jar still in his arms. "It is not a leak." Han Ju's voice had gone flat and exact, a man reading a sum he has checked twice. "A leak runs out of the wall. This runs out of nothing I can name." The thrum under Lu Cheng's knee had thinned to almost nothing. He felt the last of the tribute go down past him in a long, cool exhale. Out under the hill, all of it, the 3 jars and the 8 days, and the gathered power that should have stood every bonded man on his course and read him living into the mouth. It poured away and seeded nothing. The seals lay cold the whole length of the cut. The names stayed on the page and did not rise. Han Ju knelt with his hand on the stone he had finished, and there was no blow to strike, because a man cannot strike water that is only leaving. He pressed the stylus once more. Then he took it away. Tian You's rope slid out of his hands and lay coiled in the wet. "You followed the water," Han Ju said. "Not a charge, a reading. It went first." Lu Cheng lifted his thumb off the dead wax. "We only cut the door and let it." He set both palms flat to the false stone and felt it answer. The dry course rising clean off the seam, no seal torn, no name read, the cold mouth open under his hands. Down the whole drowned gallery not one bond had taken. The hill held nothing now. "Stand off the plank," Han Ju said. The elder lowered the empty jar and backed into the wet. At the lowest course, Lu Cheng stayed on one knee, the false stone lifted clear in both hands, the cold mouth breathing open under it. Han Ju crouched at the lowest course. He set 2 fingers to the false stone in Lu Cheng's hands and took its weight. too light and dressed too clean to be the stone that held the reach. A decoy, and a good one. His eyes went up the gallery to where the load truly stood. He let it back into Lu Cheng's hold and rose. He went up 3 courses against the drained climb and stopped at the joint Lu Cheng had prayed he would walk past, the bearing course, the one stone holding the whole drowned reach overhead. Qiao Yin came to his heel with the slate. Down, he told her. She set the wax on the plank and stepped back. He crouched and laid his palm to the joint. Lu Cheng watched a bureau man read stone like someone who had once been paid to cut it, head still, thumb walking the seam for the line of least bearing. There was one. Lu Cheng had said it himself. Pull that stone, and the reach came down course over course, and every bonded man under it went into the dark with the secret, and the record would read collapse, and the order would stand untouched, because no mouth stays open under a hill of fallen rock. Han Ju lifted the iron stylus and fitted its point into the joint. Lu Cheng did not move. Moving made the man finish it. You'll bring it down on yourself, too, the elder said low. I know the load. Han Ju leaned weight onto the stylus, and the joint gave a dry tick, the first grain of travel, the stone telling him it would go. Then his thumb, idle, ran up the course above the joint. It found the bed Lu Cheng had laid blind in the dark. No peg, no trowel mark, 30 years of feel seated in 2 fingers of stone, the same hand that had cut the decoy below. The thumb slowed. It climbed to the next course and read that one too, and the next, all of it clean under his hand, and the stylus stopped pressing. You betted all of this by feel, Han Ju said. Not a charge. Yes. I cut 11 years before they set me to sealing. His voice had gone somewhere flat and far. They never let me lay a true course again. He held the point in the joint and did not press. The whole reach weighted on 4 ounces of his hand. Lu Cheng could see him weigh it, the order against the one thing his hands had ever wanted, and he saw which was heavier the moment Han Ju's wrist eased. The stylus came out of the joint. Han Ju capped the warm wax pot against his ribs and stood. Walk them out, Mason. He looked down the drowned gallery, at the dead gray seals the whole length of it, at the cold mouth open at the bottom. Finish it true. I will write that the hill took it. He went up the rungs without another word, Qiao Yin behind him with the unmarked slate. Lu Cheng let his breath go. Then there was work to do. The true stone, he said. Behind you, in the slurry. Tian Yo had his rope in his hands again. He hauled the kept throat stone from the wet and set it into Lu Cheng's reach, and his fist closed on Lu Cheng's wrist with the grip the boy had used on the rungs. Sure now, no question left in it. Lu Cheng bedded the stone into the river seam by feel. He dressed the seat with his thumb, rocked it once, felt it find the draw and take. The cold came up through the stone into his palms, and this time he let it. The price went in clean as a ledger closing. It went into his knuckles first, then his wrists. A year, 3, more, the marrow paying out the way the tribute had poured away under the hill, steady, out and gone. The skin over the bones of his hands drew tight and dry. His breath shortened somewhere in the seating and stayed short, and a strength he would not get back left his arms and went down into the course to hold the mouth open against any wax the bureau ever warmed again. The draw steadied under his hands, out and down, patient, locked to a true stone no reading could lift. Lu Cheng sat back on his heels with an old man's hands and watched the bonded men climb toward the light. The hill would hold nothing now. He had made certain of it. The cut ended in a square of white morning. Tian Yo climbed a rung below him and set Lu Cheng's dry hands on the iron one at a time, and the 2 of them came up the dark together while the others held the light above and made room. The last reach of ladder was the longest, then grass-smelling air and the spoil bank and the open. Lu Cheng stood on the bank and let his eyes find level. The wall ran east and west across the morning, the gray courses he had cut toward the mouth season after season, every joint of it known to the ache in his thumb. Bonded men lined it, None of them had ever stood on the far side of it, and for a breath, none of them moved, as if the stone still held a bell that would ring them back down. Hanju stood by the gate gap, not in it. The wax pot was capped at his ribs, and the slate in Qiao Yin's arms carried no mark, and he looked at the line of men the way a man looks at a sum he cannot make come out wrong. "It's daylight," Tian Yu said to no one. "Nobody told us we could do it in daylight." He went first. He walked to the gap, stopped where the foundation course met the field, and put one boot over the line into wet grass. Nothing took him. No fine, no bell, no gray climbing his arm. He took another step, and another, until he stood a clear 10 paces out in the open, and then he turned, and whatever crossed his face, he did not try to hide. After that, they came. One, then a pair, then the rest, stepping over the foundation line and out, testing the ground past the wall like men testing river ice, then walking, then not testing at all. 800 years and more of bond had ended at a chalk-gray course no higher than a knee. They walked across it into the field, and the wall did nothing. Qiao Yin came to Lu Cheng on the bank. She held the slate out, blank wax, clean stylus. "I have nothing to file," she said. "No," Lu Cheng said. "You don't." She set the slate down on the spoil, careful, the way she said everything, and left it there in the dirt with its empty face to the sky. Hanju watched her do it. He did not reach for it. Lu Cheng's hands would not close all the way now. He looked at them, then at the men in the field, then at a flat block lying half-dressed at the spoil edge, stone he had cut for the wall and never set. He went to it, knelt, slow, his knees telling him the price the way the stone told him the draw. "What are you doing?" Tian Yu said, coming back through the gap. "Marking a corner." Lu Cheng laid his palm to the block and read it, the old red, the only one he had. True bed. He turned it a quarter and seated it square in the open ground, well clear of the wall, the first stone of nothing the Bureau had ordered. For what? For whoever wants 4 walls and a door that opens. He pressed his thumb along the top edge and left a shallow line in the grit, a course mark, a seat for the next stone. "Bring me the level off the lintel stack." Will said it true. Tian Yu went for the level at a run. Qiao Yin crouched at the block's far corner and put her hand flat to the stone beside his, learning the reed the way she learned everything, by setting it down. Behind them, the wall stood quiet in plain light, holding nothing, owed nothing. Lu Cheng squared the block and waited for the boy and the level, and for the first time the next course he laid would belong to the hands that laid it.